Day 4 of the Olympic Peninsula trip. The main coastal trail is beautiful, but crowded. The real stories are always just off the beaten path. Found this little side trail, not on any of my maps. Looks like it hasn't been used in years. Signs rusted through, but I think it says K&T. Probably leads to an old lookout point. Let's see where it goes. Okay, definitely not a lookout point. Wow, it's a bunker. A military-style bunker, just sitting out here in the middle of nowhere. Looks like it's been sealed for a lifetime. KNT? Could it be? The radio station? No way. The legends say it was lost to the sea. The inside was a time capsule. A thick layer of dust covered everything. A single chair, a large mixing board, a reel-to-reel tape machine. It was a small, soundproofed room, built to keep the world out and send one man's voice in. The silence was absolute, heavy, and unnerving. It felt preserved. As I set up my own modern recording equipment, I felt a strange sense of reverence, like I was in a pharaoh's tomb. I saw a set of old vintage headphones on the console, exactly where the DJ had left them. On a foolish impulse, I put them on. The silence was so profound, it was almost a noise in itself. I sat there for a moment, in the DJ's chair, surrounded by his silent, waiting equipment. I felt like an intruder, an archaeologist who had just broken the seal on a place it was meant to stay quiet forever. For fans of my show, Unsolved Wavelengths, the legend of Silas Night is the Holy Grail. An entire pirate radio station had vanished off the face of the earth in the middle of a broadcast in 1978. For my season finale, I was determined to find it. The station, WKNT, was supposedly located somewhere on the remote, storm-battered coast of the Olympic Peninsula. After weeks of cross-referencing old maps and property records, I found it. A small, concrete bunker, half swallowed by the forest, perched on a cliff overlooking the sea. It was a concrete tomb, sealed for over 40 years. I was there to find the story of a man who disappeared. I had no idea that he was still there, waiting for someone to finally turn his microphone back on. The main power was dead, but the station had an old, crank-powered generator. Against my better judgment, I hooked it up to the main console. I just wanted to see if the old vacuum tubes would still glow. I turned the crank, and with a low, humming crackle, the old equipment shuddered to life. The tubes began to glow with a warm orange light. And then the speakers hissed, not with static, with a voice. It was his voice. The calm, resonant, broadcast voice of Silas Night. Single quotes, ... Tide is a thief in the dark, ... single quotes. He whispered, the sound clear for a moment before dissolving into static. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. It wasn't a recording. The tape machine wasn't even running. The sound, the voice, had come from the machine itself. It was an echo, a memory stored in the circuits, replayed by the sudden jolt of power. The station was a tomb, and I had just woken up its ghost. I should have left, but the journalist in me was stronger than the fear. I set up my gear to record any further anomalies. That night, a storm rolled in off the coast, the same kind of storm from the last broadcast. The air in the bunker grew, heavy and electric. My laptop, which had been off, suddenly flickered to life. The screen was filled with roiling digital static, and in the static, a shape began to form. A man's silhouette. It was faint, indistinct, but it was there. The figure of a man sitting in the DJ's chair, wearing headphones. Silas Night. He wasn't looking at me. He seemed to be staring intently at the microphone in front of him, his form glitching in and out of existence like a bad TV signal. He was a ghost in the machine, a residual haunt, and the storm outside seemed to be giving him the power he needed to appear. The fear was turning into an obsessive need to understand. I started searching the bunker. In a locked desk drawer, I found it. His final handwritten script. It wasn't a shipping forecast. It was a desperate, coded warning. He'd been using his pirate radio station to transmit messages to the local fishing fleet, warning them of dangers the official channels missed. The script from his last night was a frantic plea. The dog is at the door. That was his code for a sudden, unforecasted squall of catastrophic intensity. The light is out. The lighthouse beacon had failed. He wasn't just a DJ. He was an unsung hero, a secret guardian for the men at sea. And on his last night, he had seen a perfect storm brewing, a storm that no one else was warning them about. He had died trying to save them. As I read his last words, the ghost of Silas Night grew stronger. He was no longer just a glitch on a screen. I could see him now, a full, translucent figure sitting in the DJ's chair, his hands hovering over the mixing board. He was trying to speak, but only static came out. Then, my own equipment started to go haywire. My digital recorder started playing back my own voice, but twisted and warped, interspersed with bursts of static and his ghostly whispers. The lights on my mixing board began to flash in time with the phantom broadcast. He was a signal, desperately, looking for an amplifier. He was trying to hijack my modern equipment, to use my gear as a bridge to get his final, unheard message out into the world. The room was filled with a deafening cacophony of my voice, his static, and the roar of the storm outside. He wasn't just a recording anymore. He was aware, and he was getting desperate. He was trying to force me to be his voice. The ghost of Silas Night stood up, his form almost solid now, his worried eyes locking onto mine for the first time. He wasn't angry. He was pleading. He pointed a trembling, spectral finger from the microphone to me. He wanted me to finish his broadcast. He couldn't rest until his warning was delivered. I realized then that I couldn't fight him. I couldn't run. The only way to survive was to help him. My hands shaking, I sat down in the DJ's chair, the old leather cold against my skin. I pulled the vintage microphone close. The ghost of Silas stood beside me, a silent, anxious producer for my show. I took a deep breath, and I began to speak his last words into the microphone. My voice a strange, fearful echo of his own. I read his entire final message, my voice carried out into the storm on a ghost frequency. The light is out. The bell is silent. Do not come home. As I spoke the last word, the storm outside seemed to reach a crescendo, and then suddenly fell silent. The buzzing of the old equipment faded. I looked up. The ghost of Silas Night was no longer tormented. The worry was gone from his face, replaced by a look of profound, peaceful release. He gave me a single, slow, grateful nod. Then, his form dissolved not into static, but into a soft, warm light that faded into nothing, leaving behind only the scent of ozone and old, warm vacuum tubes. The broadcast was over. The warning had been sent. His shift was finally done. I packed up my gear and left the bunker, stepping out into a world that felt calm and quiet. The storm had passed. When I got back to town, I went straight to the Maritime Archives. I had to know. I found the shipping records for the night he disappeared in 1978. There was a notation. The freighter Orion's Belt was due back in port that night, but had reported engine trouble and had anchored offshore to wait out a minor storm. Then, a second entry from the next morning. The freighter had broken its anchor line in a sudden, unforecasted squall of unprecedented intensity. It was wrecked on the shoals, but because it was so close to shore, all hands were rescued. They were the lucky ones. If they hadn't been delayed, they would have been caught in the open ocean. They would have sailed right into the heart of the storm. They never knew that their lives had been saved by a warning they never even heard. I aired the story as my season finale. I played the recordings. I told the story of the Orion's Belt. I told the world about Silas Night, a hero who no one knew. The bunker is empty now. His echo is gone. But sometimes, when I'm driving late, at night along that remote stretch of coast, I'll turn on my car radio. And on the quietest nights, when the static between stations is just right, I can almost hear it. A faint, calm voice, drifting on a frequency that doesn't exist, whispering. A single, comforting phrase into the darkness. All clear. The dog is sleeping. You can come home now.